Hello and welcome to State Matters. I'm your host, Matt Muratori. My guest today is the Economic Development Director at the Economic Development Foundation for the town of Plymouth. Before working for the foundation, she worked with 45 of the largest cities in the U.S. to implement best practices through a program hosted by the Harvard Kennedy School. Previous to this work, she was the Director of Policy Development and Implementation with the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development for the Commonwealth. She has a bachelor's degree from Ryerson University in Toronto, Ontario, and a master's from Northeastern University. Please join me in welcoming Jessica Casey. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So we always start off our show by finding out who our guests are. So why don't you explain to folks who you are?
Sure, will do. So my name is Jessica Casey. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Plymouth Regional Economic Development Foundation.
It's a mouthful.
It certainly is.
So tell us about your background a little bit. We talked about your schooling and all that, but tell us a little bit more about, what you did with your schooling, and particularly you were up in Canada for your bachelor's degree, and then you did your master's at my alma mater, Northeastern.
Yes.
What's the differences in the different countries in schooling?
Sure. So I've been with the Economic Development Foundation for just over a year. Before that, I actually worked with the Harvard Kennedy School, working with 45 of the largest cities across the U.S., helping them to implement best practices. And before that, I was the Director of Policy for Secretary Bielecki in the Patrick administration, working on workforce housing policy. But as you mentioned, I got my master's degree at Northeastern University in regional and urban policy. And before that, I got my Bachelor of Arts degree at Ryerson University in geographic analysis.
What is that now, specifically?
Specifically, it's actually geographic information systems, so learning how to use mapping systems and databases to understand geographic trends. So trends over time and trends over space. And that work actually led me to looking at policy and how policy is delivered and how federal funds and state funds, provincial funds are delivered to different agencies. And from that work, I ended up working with the Ontario government. So I actually worked with the Ontario government for several years before I came to Massachusetts to go to school. And the differences are quite remarkable, actually. The way in which money flows through the system, specifically for health and education, are very different.
How does it work up in Canada for health and education?
So for health and education, it actually goes from the federal government to the Ontario government, which is the provincial government, and from there it goes to a regional district, and from that regional district it gets allocated to the number of facilities that are in the area. So it really isn't a bottom-up, it's more of a top-down funding stream.
And so you've had the luxury to see both governments, how they work. What's your opinion on what works better?
Well, I'm very grateful to actually be in Massachusetts with Home Rule State to see how interesting the zoning works and how the funding works for all of the different municipalities. And it was quite interesting to be at the state level to be able to see how different municipalities had their money flow through from the bottom up. And I think that different municipalities are challenged with different issues, and sometimes that relates to bottom-up funding, but it's pretty interesting to see how education systems are developed differently in municipalities and how that links really directly to property tax and the number of students and expenditure per pupil. So it's pretty interesting.
So it's not that either one is better or worse, it's just they're just different.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. What's more efficient, do you think?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, what's more efficient and what's more equitable and what's more effective? I think that people here in Massachusetts really like the bottom up. It seems like you can choose the municipality that you would like to live in based on the different services that it provides, whether that be education or different employment opportunities. And so in that sense, I think that people think more strategically about what municipality they would live in, whereas Canada, it's more the funding is more equalized, so it really is the public school system.
Yeah, okay. How'd you like Northeastern?
I love Northeastern. Yeah, it was great.
School.
Yeah, it was a really good school, and I worked with Barry Bluestone and also Stephanie Pollock, and they were great advisors working in the Dukakis Center.
For the folks at home who don't know who these people are, who are these people?
So Barry Bluestone used to be the dean of the policy school, but he's very well known for all of his work with the Commonwealth Housing Task Force, and he's worked very closely with the different administrations on policy, economic policy, and also housing policy. And Stephanie Pollock is now the Secretary for Transportation, working in the Baker administration, and she's doing a great job there. It's always interesting to be able to see where those folks are and who they're working with.
Every time I see her, she always shakes her head about she never thought she'd be a part of the MBTA, and so much discussions about the MBTA when she was taking on this role.
Well, she
There's a lot
did
there.
really great work at the
She's done a
Dukakis
good work,
Center,
yeah.
actually, very focused on transportation, hub and spoke, and understanding different services and how service gaps are happening and things like that. Her work has been very interesting, and I think it leads to a lot of policy work that she's doing now with MBTA.
And we're going to get into it shortly with talking about the transportation with regard to Cordish. We'll get into that shortly and how we've been working on that in town. So the economic, so you work for the Economic Foundation, that big long name that it has.
Yes.
Explain to people, because I think it's confusing to a lot of people, is what is that foundation and what is the relationship with that foundation to the town of Plymouth?
Sure.
And then how does that relate to the state? So I know that that's a lot in there, but if you could just break it down for everyone, I think that'd be helpful.
Sure, unpackage it a bit. So the Economic Development Foundation has been in place for a number of years. It's a nonprofit, and it provides economic development services and recommendations and advice to the town of Plymouth. The main goal of the foundation is to diversify the tax base and also to increase the tax base. So understanding how commercial and industrial and residential are balanced, and then understanding sort of how are we growing the employment base in Plymouth and what does that look like. So those are the main mission points for the actual foundation itself.
And it's actually a nonprofit board, and so there are how many
Correct.
members on that board?
There are 13 members on the
Okay.
board.
And do you know the makeup, how that makeup happens?
There are a number of business owners on the board, a number of financial folks that have worked with Rockland Trust and other banks in the area. There are presidents of community colleges in the region, and also folks from the Chamber of Commerce.
And there's also some appointees or some folks from the town, too, that are on
That's
there, too. I think
correct.
there's
So
the
we
chair
have-
of the selectmen.
We have the Chair of Selectmen, Ken Tavares. We also have the Town Manager, Melissa Riggi, and Lee Hartman, Director of Planning and Development.
So it really is a good mix of the community, having the schools, the colleges, as you said, the business community, the chamber, and the town.
Absolutely. It's a really great dynamic
Yeah.
with that board. A lot of really powerful perspectives and a lot of understanding both on the logistical ends of how town hall functions, but then also sort of those opportunities where what businesses need, and then also what community colleges and academic institutions need to be able to link their graduates with employment opportunities.
And you are the only employee they have
That's
as the
correct.
economic director. And their funding comes mainly from the town, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay. So town meeting allocates that funding every year, and I think it was maybe 125,000 or
That's
something
right.
like that. Do they have any other sources of income, too?
There is the Economic Development Fund, which actually isn't a source of income for the Economic Development Foundation, but it is a funding pot or a revenue that is available to the Economic Development Foundation specifically for studies and research that needs to be done around industry clusters and transportation and other economic development related pieces. One of the things that the foundation will be thinking of doing is updating the 2003 Fiscal Impact Report, and the funding for that Fiscal Impact Report would then come from the Economic Development Fund.
Can you talk a little bit about that fiscal impact report?
Sure.
So that was from 2003, you said?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it's quite timely at this particular point in time because, as we know, Entergy has announced that they'll be closing no later than May the 31st, 2019. And in addition to that, we also know that the sewer has been estimated at around, I think, 48 million.
Right,
And so those two pieces are very large pieces. But we also know that Plymouth only has around 5.6% of its land zoned as industrial commercial. Well, we know that we're getting 18% of our tax base in the town of Plymouth from that land. So we're seeing a lot higher portion of the tax revenue that comes in than the actual land that's zoned.
Okay.
So all of these pieces are kind of coming together through this fiscal impact report where we'll be working with RKG to be able to look
Now,
at.
who is that? RKG?
RKG is a consultant that's based out of Boston.
Okay.
They actually completed the 2003 fiscal impact study, so we'll be asking them to update the fiscal impact study to be able to look at the town's revenue sources and also the impact of the loss of the Entergy pilot payment, and then also the impact of that sewer cost.
Okay. Now, the Entergy pilot loss of payment, That's about 5% of the town budget.
That's correct.
Is that such a big deal, or is it a big deal?
Well, when we look at
People
it,
look at it and say, well, it's only 5%, it shouldn't be that bad, but
when we look at it in comparison to when Cordage Park closed, when the Cordage Company closed, it seems like a much smaller. It seems like a much smaller deal, let's say, or a much smaller impact. When we look at Entergy being 5% of the town's budget compared to Vernon, Vermont, where Vernon, Vermont's budget was almost over 90% funded through the pilot payment from Entergy. So I think that when we think of the 5%, it seems like a small impact, but it is still $9.25 million, which is quite substantial. But in comparison to other experience that Plymouth has had in other communities that are going through the closure of the power plants, it's actually quite small.
so what sort of advice is the economic development and you as the director looking to give to the town of Plymouth?
Sure. Well, I think partnership is key, and we've always worked hard on collaboration, and we've worked hard on collaboration with the town of Plymouth and also the state, of course. But we also work really hard to be collaborative with the Chamber of Commerce, Destination Plymouth, and also Plymouth 400. And so one example of something that we're doing related to the Entergy closing is that the Chamber of Commerce has the Higher Education Leadership Council, and that council has 6 community colleges that are a part of it. They meet every quarter. And so what the foundation is doing is helping to tie together academic institutions along with the Entergy employees that will likely be unemployed over the next couple of years, and helping to really connect those employees to help them retain, to help them stay in the Plymouth region, help them find work opportunities.
So through retraining into other
That's
areas
right.
that need it, yeah.
That's correct.
That's terrific.
That's
So
correct.
you folks are actually helping spearhead that.
We are. It is being led by the Chamber of Commerce, but we're a big part of helping to connect to Entergy and helping to make sure that those conversations are happening.
Yeah, that's great. So, so that's one of the areas you're working on to help the town. There's another area that I want to get into now that you've been instrumental with, and that has to do, you brought up earlier, Cordage Park. So let's talk about that whole process, and let's get into, actually before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your background when you worked at Economic Housing and Development at the state level. Talk about that job you had there.
Sure. So I worked for a couple of years, as I mentioned, with Secretary Bielecki under the Patrick administration. My title was also a long one there. It was Director of Policy Development and Implementation. And I worked quite a bit on policy development related to workforce housing and thinking about workforce housing as an economic development argument, and really that focusing on building and retaining talent. And so the idea there was, if Massachusetts has experienced a negative net migration for a number of years, there was only 1 year with a positive net migration, and I think it was 0.8%. And I used to joke, well, we still talk about that as being kind of the winning year. And so we developed the stretch goal, and the stretch goal really spoke to how many homes need to be built for middle and moderate income families that would end with the outcome of having a positive net migration, where those students who graduate in Massachusetts can stay in Massachusetts and work. And so that policy really focused on that. But it also related to a lot of the grant programs that were going on at Housing and Economic Development, and one of those was MassWorks. And so when MassWorks was actually, when the legislation came through to have the 6 or 7 different funding streams brought into one under the MassWorks title, we were going through an initiative at that point in time to be able to streamline the application process. And so one of the things that I did do there was I helped to develop the online system that municipalities use to submit their MassWorks applications. And once they submitted their MassWorks applications, those applications got shared with different agencies for feedback, and then all of that feedback got consolidated into the system so that Secretary Bielecki could look and make final recommendations to, of course, the governor, who would make the awards. So
I was just going to ask you that. So how does that process work? And let's relate it to Plymouth. So Plymouth just recently last year received $4 million from that MassWorks, $2 million for Cordage, and $2 million for the T-Worth. So how
That's correct.
So it goes so that the application is filed with the state. So how does the whole process then work at that point? How did Plymouth get it selected for that?
Sure. Well, I think Plymouth got selected for MassWorks because the projects that we put in for were extremely competitive, and they were competitive because they spoke to increasing the employment base, diversifying the tax revenue, and also focused on connectivity and thinking about traditional industry sectors. So I think for those reasons, those two particular projects were very competitive. The way that it works is, of course, Jonathan Beater, who's the Director of Public Works, was the one who submitted the application on behalf of the town of Plymouth, and that got submitted into the system. And what would have happened at that point is the Director of MassWorks, Erica Kruder, she would have checked off all of the agencies who would have to weigh in or have feedback on what that application touched on. So that application would be shared with all of those agencies. They would have staff that would review, make comment on that, and all of that feedback would then go back to Secretary Ash, the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, and he would then put the final list of recommendations together.
So it's a pretty well thought through process then.
It's a very well thought through process, and it happens in about 7 or 8 weeks. So it's a
well,
very quick turnaround.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Cordish one, because long before you came, long before I came, Cordish has always been something of an issue with the town. It's a great piece of land. It's beautiful, right on the water. And when Walmart closed years ago, and it's been closed for years, I mean, it's been really a ghost town. Over the last several years, it's been brought up with a lot of colleges in there, et cetera. But talk about that $2 million and what that's going to do and what this whole thing is going to look like when 10 or 15 years from now.
Sure, I would love to. Cordish Park is one of those opportunities that when I arrived in town, I just couldn't believe how just the potential for that particular site. Yeah. So just to give your viewers a bit of background, the Cordish Park site is almost 50 acres, has around a mile of coastline. When the Giannetti family purchased that, the Janco Development purchased that a number of years ago, it was a defunct outlet mall in the Commerce Center. They only had around 10,000 square feet leased, and the site looked a lot different at that point in time. Today, I don't think a lot of people know, but there are actually more than 63 companies that work in the Commerce Center.
I didn't know that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
1,600 employees work in the Commerce Center each and every day. It's home to Quincy College. Quincy College expects to have over 1,500 students enrolled in their Plymouth-based programs in September. They're launching a brand new aquaculture certificate program that will be starting in the fall. And they have more than 350,000 square feet leased today. So that site is really remarkable, and it's come a long way in the last decade. The MassWorks Award...
Is there still space open there?
There is very little commercial space left on that site, very little. And I think Quincy College is growing at a really great rate, and so they're taking on more space as well, which is helping to lower the vacancy rate there. But the MassWorks Award is $2 million, and what that will do is it will bring utilities from Court Street through the site underneath the MBTA easement and into the waterfront parcels of that site. And what that will do is it will unlock the potential for development for those waterfront parcels. But in addition to that, it will also help support the demolition of that Walmart, which is a 125,000 square foot Walmart building. It will be taken down, and in that spot, approximately 200 of residential units will be built, will be constructed. And I think people can expect to see that, the demolition of the Walmart and the beginning of the construction of residential and the work on the boulevard in late July.
Okay, so for $2 million,
yes.
How much is going to be invested in that whole area?
Right, so this is the trick to the MassWorks program. A lot of times what the state would like to see is for the amount of money that the state invests, what is the private investment that's leveraged out of that investment? And so for Cordish Park, for the $2 million investment, it will bring the Walmart down, it will support the construction of those residential units, and it will also support 2 commercial pads up along Court Street. And we estimate that at just over $30 million in private investment.
Okay.
But the long-term potential for Cordish is actually $350 million in private investment. And that's because the site is permitted through the 40R program for 675 residential units. But we'll
talk about the 40R for a minute for people.
Yep. So 40R is an overlay district. It's a smart growth district, and it allows multifamily housing at a higher density than the underlying zoning. And it's very beneficial to the town because the town sees incentive. There's incentive payments that come along with 40R. And for Janco Development, it allows them to build at a higher density on the site, which makes a lot of sense because, of course, we know that the commuter rail comes right into Cortage Park. So it revolves a lot around that transportation.
So there are going to be, I think you said 200 units of, are they like apartments or condos or something?
So there'll be 200 apartments, 200 stacked townhomes.
Townhomes,
There'll
okay.
be rental,
Okay.
and 25% of those will be offered at 80% AMI, which is an affordable to 80%
Okay.
area median income.
Okay, and these other homes that you're talking about, what are those going to be? Are those going to be single-family homes or?
So the difference that will make up the 675, there are two buildings on the waterfront. We often refer to them as 1500 and 1600 for those people who want to be technical. And those two buildings will be the home to condos. So
Condos,
waterfront
okay.
condos.
Okay, great.
Right now, one of those buildings is 6 stories and one is 4 stories.
Okay.
And so Janco will be able to put on 2 more stories on that 4-story building. So they'll both be 6 stories tall.
You know, those market value condos?
No, they will also have 20% affordable.
20% affordable, okay.
So just for your viewers with Chapter 40R, 25% of rental units need to be offered as affordable, and 20% of ownership units need to be offered as affordable. So that number changes a little bit between
Okay.
ownership and rental.
So everything else that's already there, as you talked about with Quincy College and all the others, that will all stay there as
That's right.
retail space and college space and all that. Is there anything else they're looking to add down the road as well?
Sure. Well, the site is actually permitted to put a 3rd story on the pier, and the pier is a really unique building. For those people who haven't seen it, it's about 400 feet long, I believe, and 80 feet wide. For those folks that know, I'm sure they do, but it's a federal channel that's been dredged into Cortage. It needs a lot of dredge work still because it's been a while since it was cleaned up the last time. But they do have the ability to put a 3rd story on that pier. And there's programming that's being talked about as well for a potential hotel or potential hospitality facility.
Yeah, it's so nice to have that for North Plymouth.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
That's terrific. So again, only $2 million for that
Yes.
to get all this. Okay. So talk about the T-Wharf then. There was another $2 million that was handed out for the T-Wharf. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm also really excited about the T-Wharf and the waterfront, and there were $2 million that were awarded to the T-Wharf. I'm sure folks know, but the T-Wharf, the original T-Wharf was built in the early 1900s. In 1980, it was actually declared as needing a lot of work. There was a report done then that said, you know, you should really demolish this and probably build a new T-Wharf. And the functionality of that structure has been inadequate for many decades, to the extent that the town of Plymouth had to pay for the fuel facility to be moved from the T-Wharf onto the town pier because it just wasn't safe to even hold that. So there's MDF that's been kind of holding that thing together and plants growing out of it and all sorts of strange things. But if you were to go down to the T-Wharf area today, what you'd end up seeing is the old T-Wharf has been completely demolished, and the pilings have started to go in for the new boardwalk, which will connect from the town pier around the Woods restaurant and into the parking area. But you'll also start to see those pilings for the new T-Wharf, which really isn't the shape of a T anymore. It's going to be more like a hockey stick, is what I've been told. So,
And being from Canada, you like that.
I do.
Just had to say that.
I do. You're absolutely right. Near and dear to my heart. But it's going to support the aquaculture industry and
Yeah.
the lobster and fishing industries. And so, you know, a couple of years ago, Plymouth had 3 aquaculture growers. Now we have 33. A couple of years ago, we only had 10 acres of aquaculture farming, and now we have over 100 acres.
That's
So
terrific.
the amount of private investment, again, that's happening in that particular area, not just related to the T-Wharf, but also different parcels that people are seeing buildings come down and new revitalized buildings go up. There's a lot of activity down there that's very exciting.
And the work that's happening on T-Wharf is different than what's happening on the boat ramp.
That's correct. So the T-Wharf is actually a Town of Plymouth project, again, supported through MassWorks. But there are 2 boat ramps in the Town of Plymouth. One is the town boat ramp, which is beside the Lobster Hut, and the second is the state boat ramp. And the work that people are seeing with the big crane that's out there, that's actually the state boat ramp. So it really isn't a town-owned project or a town-managed project. So there's been a little frustration, I think, because some of the work has been delayed there. But you know, it will get done, and when it is done, it will be in place for a number of decades. So,
And that should be done sometime this summer?
we're hoping, yes.
And
by
the
the end.
T-Wharf as well should be done by the early fall?
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
right.
so,
So that
okay.
whole area will look a lot
Okay.
different.
Wow. So for $4 million, look what the town of Plymouth is able to do. And that's a great program, the Mass Works, and the private-public partnership is just fantastic.
Absolutely, and I think the relationship between the foundation, the town of Plymouth, the Chamber of Commerce, Plymouth 400, Destination Plymouth, and all of these other bodies are just absolutely fantastic. I mean, that's really the best way to tell the story for opportunity in Plymouth, is to be working together to make sure that all of these pieces come together.
Go back to Cottage real quick and talk about the transportation
Sure.
and the train that's out there. How's that going to change over time, do you think?
Yeah, so transportation is a real tough one here for Plymouth. We have different transportation modes here. So we have the commuter rail station. We also have GATRA, which is the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Authority.
Yeah.
And so we also have that. And then in addition to that, we also have all of our shuttles and our trolleys, but we also have ferry service to and from P-Town, Provincetown, in and around the area. So we have all of these pieces that overlap. And one of the things we're trying to do is make sure that they overlap together so that service is being provided to the highest extent possible. For the commuter rail, we're very hopeful that once residential breaks ground on Cottage and we start to see more vitality on that site, that we'll be able to work with the MBTA and DOT to be able to increase commuter service there, but also have runs that really support commuters coming in and out of Plymouth to South Station in Boston. That's really the objective there.
Yeah, that's terrific. We've got a short period of time left, but tell us quickly, what are some of the next things that you and the foundation are working on? I know you're doing some work with 400.
Yep, so we're doing work with Plymouth 400, that's for sure, helping to make sure that the tourism and the cultural piece are strong. One of the things we're doing is we're partnering with Plymouth UK on a number of different initiatives, as well as MARS, which is the Mayflower Autonomous Research Vessel. And all of those discussions are really leveraged off the Plymouth 400 platform. So a lot of these relationships are relationships that we're meeting people through the Plymouth 400, which is exciting. But MassWorks round open up again, so we'll be applying for that in partnership with the town of Plymouth. And there are a number of other really great state efforts and grants that are available that we have our eye on. So excited about that.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I could go on for another hour with you, but thank you for what you've done for the town of Plymouth, what you continue to do with the Economic Foundation. You've been a breath of fresh air for all of us, so thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
coming
much.
here today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank my guest, Jessica Casey, for joining us today and educating us on how economic development works in the town of Plymouth and how it intersects with the state. I want to thank the folks here at PAC TV for another great show, and I especially want to thank you at home for watching. We'll see you next time on State Matters.